All right. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us all here today. Today's shiur should be Le'ilu Nishmas, our dear friend Menachem ben Yisrael Yaakov, as well as my dear aunt Rivka Bas Gavriel Tzvi, and for Zaidi, Reb Shmuel ben Yosef Dov HaKohen, and L'Refuah Shalema Bekarov, Meshalom ben Sarachel, Miriam Basara, and Yair Yashia ben Chaya Atara. Now, we are on page 167 in the Art Scroll, for those who are following along. And we are in the middle of talking about the idea of that when a person lives on their own, without friends, without family, no wife, no children, and how they should utilize the extra time that they have, that they're not being busy dealing with family matters, with matters of to be social because they don't have any friends. And they should use that time to get closer to Hashem. And Chovos HaLevavos mentions that he's not saying to go ahead and daven more that you should have a wife, you should find a wife, you should have children, you should find friends. He's saying utilize your time for the purpose that we need inevitably is to get close to Hashem, because when it comes to Olam Haba, we're going to need all the zechusim and everything. And so utilize this time in that manner. And he's saying that you should be happy that you're in the position that you don't have you don't have those obligations, and that does provide you the freedom to be able to, put your time into avodas Hashem. Now he continues like this. And Chovos HaLevavos cites an anecdote that portrays the benefit of living without family. So understand that family is something everybody wants. But what he's trying to put together over here a little bit is a little solace in the idea that if you don't have family and you don't have friends, that there is an upside to this. Not that he's trying to say that it's terrible to have family, it's terrible to have friends. And you're going to see how tomorrow we're going to go into the idea of when you are living with family, there's positives to both of them. And both of them are a gift from Hashem, and that's what he's trying to let us understand is how we perceive when we don't have friends and family, how that is a gift. Now he says like this, Va'amru al echad me'aperushim. And he's told about one of the Perushim. The Perushim were these people that would seclude themselves and go do hisbodados. They would go into the fields. They would leave their families for periods of time. And they would go do avodas Hashem to get closer to Hashem. So, va'amru lechem ha'perushim shenichnas lemedina achas lohiras es yeshvei avodas alekem. He would travel around the world, and he came across this one land, and in the city over there, he wanted to go preach Perushas and to show people how they can get closer to Hashem. He found that all the people there wearing the same color clothes and adornments, meaning they had the same designs on them, kind of like if it was a kittel, everyone wore the same kittel. He also saw that their burial places were right near the entrances of their homes. Also, he noticed that there were no women among them. He asked them about this, and this is what they answered. The reason we all wear the same exact color is in order that the poor man among us should not be distinguishable from the wealthy man. So that the wealthy man will not come to be arrogant and glorify himself with his wealth. And the poor man will not come to consider himself a disgrace. And so that our condition while we are living on earth should correspond to our future condition when we are buried beneath it. And that the same way we all are buried with tachrichim, with the same exact clothing, they had this idea that they wanted everyone to be equal. In order to get close to Hashem, they had to take worldly matters out of the concept. And the concept over here was that if there was no segregation between rich and poor, and so the rich man can't be arrogant, the poor man won't feel bad about themselves. Once you make everyone even, it's an even playing field, it makes it a lot easier in their minds that they thought about this. It makes it a lot easier for them to get close to Hashem in order to be able to do avodas Hashem. And he went further and he said, and he digressed over here for a minute just to talk about one of the kings of our times. He would mingle with the subjects and he would not be recognized among other people. How he did that was because he conducted himself modestly in the choices of his adornments and clothing, and so he shouldn't feel hafty. He shouldn't feel like he is better than anybody else. He shouldn't feel above everyone else. And so what he did was he acted, dressed just like everybody else, and he blended right in, so much to the fact that nobody even knew who he was. Now, going back to this city that one of these Purushim fell upon, he said that these town people went further and they said like this, and for the reason that we have located the graves of our deceased near our homes' entrances, is so that we can take their example to heart and be ready to die. Is that when they look at these people, when they look at the graves, they should say to themselves, we have to do our best every single day because at any moment we could also pass on to the next world. And so we want to always be ready for the next world. And we will thus be motivated to prepare for ourselves the provisions, meaning the spiritual provisions that we need for our journey up to Shemayim, the teshuvah and the good deeds that can bring us to the place of eternal rest in Olam Haba. And as for the idea that the fact that you didn't see any women and any children around over here, is daki yachdenu lahem kirya kreva mikan. Know that we have designated a nearby district for them, that they built a little town nearby. Whenever one of us needs to do something involving them, the family, the wives, the children, he goes to them, does what's necessary, and he returns right away back to us. We do this because we have seen what mental distraction, great loss, and extensive exertion and effort their proximity causes us. And so the saying is that having to deal with family all the time requires a lot of their day-to-day time. And they didn't want to do that. They wanted more of their time to be put into the efforts to avoid Hashem. And the serenity we attain from all of this when they are away from us, when they're away from their family and children, which enables us to choose or to focus on matters of the world to come and despise matters of this world. The whole concept over here by them is so that they could get away from worldly matters and utilize their time to really, really get close to Hashem. Their words found favor in the eyes of this parish, so much so, and he blessed them and encouraged them in their practices. He gave them a bracha and he came over there to preach. We know throughout times there were always Rabbanim that traveled and went to different towns and gave speeches, taught Torah. And this parish would do the same, to go around to teach people these methods. Not necessarily that people should change their entire livelihoods the way they did stuff, but in order for the people to understand the concepts, utilize those tools, and to practice it a bit, what makes sense for them. But he left without teaching them anything because he felt that they were on such a high level, so much more than he can even teach them. And so the idea we hear from this whole thing isn't so that we should learn how that we should give up our families, put them in a separate house, and move into a whole desolate town. That's not the idea. The idea over here is that we can learn something from this. Baruch Hashem, everyone on this shiur has friends, has family, and we're not tried with this concept of not having any family and friends. But one thing we could learn from this is that there are times that we understand that we need to remove ourselves from our day-to-day And it could be, like we spoke about in the last couple of days, it could be a half hour, an hour a day. It could be a certain time in the week, a certain time in the month. Something to that matter. There are people that do mass trips to graves. We just had Reb Shaya's yard side. People go out and do it's a spiritual trip, right? So the concept is not foreign. People do spiritual trips. People go Rosh Hashanah to Uman. They do spiritual trips. And the idea over here is to set aside some time on whatever frequency makes sense for you in order to get close to Hashem. And that's what we really learn from this not having a wife, children, and family. And that's the most important part. But one of the things that Chovos HaLevavos is teaching us is that if you do find yourself in such a situation, these are the things that you can take to heart to find comfort. And we spoke about yesterday, is to understand that Hashem is always there with you. You're never alone. And things to that matter. And with utilizing those tools, we can get better at getting close to Hashem and utilizing our times every single day towards our family that we need to, but also utilizing our time as we're supposed to towards Hashem and towards Avodas Hashem. Thank you, everyone, for joining us all here today, and I love you all.